webinar was set up to give you, the Maximo community, really an opportunity to take a step back and let us help you think about what your reporting strategy is. And thank you for all of those that gave us some momentum on LinkedIn to put this together. There certainly appears to us to be momentum within the Maximo community that seems to recognise that getting more value from data is becoming more and more relevant. And I think it's fair to say that that's probably a true statement for a lot of what we see in IT today. But to us, the challenge as we see it now, particularly for the Maximo user group, is, how do you get to your data in such a way that not only makes reporting simpler, but actually starts to add value back to the business and therefore justifies any investment that you may need to secure in order to move your reporting needs forward. So in order to help you start to think about what those options are today, I'm going to be sharing with you a couple of years of experience that we've got in this space, and hopefully be able to add some value to your thinking moving forward. Okay, so in terms of an agenda today, I thought I'd start off by sharing a true story with you about a company that we've worked with that has actually done more around reporting from Maximo and what they uncovered when they went down that path. We're also going to be looking at the challenge of enterprise reporting, what it is, and why it is such a pain for a lot of people. We'll be looking at the 3 potential roadmaps, just really what are they. Then we'll be going into a couple of those roadmaps in a bit more detail. We'll then be talking, or I'll be talking a bit more around the licensing structure from IBM and potentially what that means to you as an organization and as a Maximo user. And then finally, we're going to finish with a wrap up and a couple of takeaways. I'm not expecting any more than my material to take about 20 minutes today. And as I say, we may go on for a little bit longer depending on how many questions we get in. Okay, before we do, let's just get into, let's just do some very quick introductions. So my name is Andy Shepherd. I'm the National Sales Manager for Triangle. I've been in the IT industry now for nearly 14 years, which is about double the amount of time I was in my previous profession, but I won't go into that now. I was with IBM for about 11 of those 14 years, working mainly in the data center arena, but wanted to move more into business analytics. So I joined force with Chris Lewis last year, who's our MD and owner. He's on the webinar with us today, listening intently, and maybe I'll attempt with some questions towards the end. So let me just give you a very quick feel for the organisation. So we are a 1.5 million turnover company. We're growing 25% year on year. We're based in the UK, but we do have some relationships in the US as well. We've got a team here in the UK of developers and support staff, and we're hoping to expand and grow that team as well. And about 2 years ago, it was Chris actually that noticed that there seemed to be some movement in the Maximo space, and there seemed to be certainly a pull from the Maximo community to do something about reporting. So one of Chris's ethos is to innovate and to add value where we can. So on that basis, he started a journey really of looking at reporting over Maximo and how we can potentially help organizations with that particular requirement. So anyway, that's enough about us. So that's a little bit about Triangle. Okay, so I'd really like to start today by sharing a true story with you about a customer who found themselves really wanting to improve their business and move their business forward, but they couldn't because of the lack of visibility into their data. And this customer, they really had what they thought was quite a clear goal, and that was that they wanted to extend the life of their assets. And in this particular case, it was around power stations. And the way that they wanted to do that was to be able to get better visibility around what was happening specifically around work orders. And they wanted to get to the level of detail which their current reporting wouldn't allow them. So they wanted to understand, for example, which maintenance teams had performed the most work orders, who had not, what was the average time between fixes, and they wanted to have the ability to be able to drill down into the individual about who had performed what and when. And the reason they wanted to do that was they understood that if they could then start to get to that level of detail, they could then take the action that they needed to improve their operational efficiencies and therefore achieve their business objective, which is to extend the life of their assets. So how did Triangle help with that? Well, we formed a team of two of our consultants, and we worked with the end users to really understand the data that they needed access to on a daily and monthly basis to enhance the team's performance. And after just a couple of months, we were able to give this particular customer all the data that they needed to make those critical decisions to move their business forward. The business outcomes on top of that were the fact that they could now reduce the time it was taking to get reports done. Reports that were taking up to a day were now getting done in minutes. The business now has far greater control over the work orders and when they're happening and by whom and how long it's taking. But also the BI team, who were responsible for producing those reports and making them available to the business, they found themselves in what they called, or what we call, the reporting circle of hell. And their ability to support the business and focus on rolling this out means that they can now roll this out across another 5 power stations. So what is the reporting circle of hell? So the title of this webinar is How Can I Evolve My Reporting from Maximo? But before we get to the answer, we need to understand what the problem is with typical enterprise reporting. The problem is what we describe as the reporting circle of hell. And we see it across all industries, across all different types of line of business, and no one is unique. The needs are always the same. And that is that end users want their data when they want it, how they want it, and that it's accurate. Because let's face it, most line of business folk don't appreciate the challenges of reporting. I had a client recently who told me that on a good day they'll have a report out to the business in 2 weeks. One of their longer reports takes 9 months, and that's just unacceptable to most enterprises. So what is happening? So a typical reporting of hell looks something like this. The line of business make a request for a report to be produced. The report author produces that report and does some analysis. There is then typically some administration to tailor the report, which is then issued back to the requester. Now, in the ideal scenario, this would take little time to do and it would be right first time. But the reality is reports normally are not what the end user asked for because the information is wrong, so it goes back around the loop again. And usually by the time it's accurate, it's too late for the requester to be able to take the action that they need. So what you end up with is a vicious circle that doesn't meet the needs of the end user and is deeply frustrating for the report authors as well. This, in simple terms, is what we help dozens and dozens of customers every year move away from and to break that circle. So, if the reporting circle of hell is a reality for you as a Maximo user, or potentially someone that you're working with as a Maximo user, then how do we help you plan to move forward to enable you and the business to get better visibility of the data that Maximo is producing in a faster, more accurate and visually based manner? So as we see it, there are really 3 options open to you. You can either look at IBM Cognos, potentially look at other reporting tools such as Oracle or SAP, or carry on using BIRT from Actuate. I'm going to concentrate on the IBM and Actuate options because, to be frank, we're not overly familiar with the SAP and Oracle tools, but I do recognise that for some people that is absolutely an option. And as part of your research, I'm going to send you a white paper covering all the major and emerging business analytics vendors, which you may want to take a look at as part of your own research. It is a Gartner paper rather than one that we've produced. But when considering your roadmap, it is worth remembering that in this example, when Gartner and other analysts, it says business analytics and business intelligence, they're looking not just for functionality but also completeness of vision as well. So analytics covers a whole bunch of different considerations, not just business intelligence but forecasting, planning and predictive as well. Okay, so let's just take a few minutes to consider what Roadmap-BIRT might look like for you. So there is an option to do nothing. You know, BIRT is a familiar tool to many people. The development work has already been done, and I would guess that the skills probably exist within your business. And it's effectively free when you buy Maximo as well. But what we're starting to see from IBM, both in terms of what they're saying and what they're doing around licensing, would seem to indicate there's not going to be a lot of investment from IBM moving forward on this particular roadmap. We also think there's probably a number of reasons for this, specifically around functionality. So the fact that there's no way to bring in other data sources, for example, if that's something that you wanted to do from a reporting perspective, but can be complex and difficult to understand. And also can be a bit of a challenge to manage as well, particularly some of the queries that need to be run. And our sense is it's more of a developer-based tool than an enterprise-class BI tool in relation to Maximo. We also suspect that it's not very intuitive, and that also there's not a lot of end-user self-service, which, if we think about ways to break the reporting circle of hell that I touched on earlier, it should be part of your strategy and thinking. Okay, so let's just spend a couple of minutes on Roadmap-Cognos. So I understand that for some of you, Cognos may be an unknown product. So a very quick bit of background for you is, for those of you who are not aware, Cognos sits within IBM's software group, the same as Tivoli, of which Maximo sits within. It was an acquisition that IBM made in 2007 for about $5 billion. And IBM saw an opportunity in data analytics. So in good old IBM fashion, they just went and bought someone. It is IBM's flagship enterprise reporting tool, and it will undoubtedly remain so for the foreseeable future. With business analytics, well, within the business analytics framework, there are other applications for financial reporting and planning, as well as statistics and predictive analytics as well. So we're going to be focusing specifically on the business intelligence side of it today rather than anything else. So, IBM has continued to invest in Cognos, and as I say, will do for many, many years to come. The business analytics space is a hotly contested space, and again, when you take a look at the white paper that I'll send over, you'll see that IBM features quite highly in that. In 2009, IBM started giving the Maximo customer base free Cognos licenses, which we'll touch on in the next slide in a bit more detail. But before we do, let's just consider what deploying Cognos means for the Maximo user. So without doubt, deploying Cognos will bring a lot more functionality and versatility to your reporting. Better reporting tools address the circle of hell that we discussed, but it also starts to move towards a more user-friendly model and an enterprise reporting model as well. So let's run through some of the benefits of looking at Cognos. Drill down capability. In our experience, once users start to get access to their data, and if we look at the animation on the screen there with that graph where I've put in the box there, as soon as users see that, the first thing they want to do is drill down into it, and they want to start asking questions around, well, what does that mean to my business, and why is that there and not over there? And Cognos and the way it works means that because we can build it in such a way that data links to data, it means that you can get access to the detailed Maximo data that you need to make some of those crucial decisions that I touched on earlier. It is a self-service model, and what I mean by that is within Cognos you can produce dashboards for the high-level execs, but you can also have what we call Report Studio and Query Studio, which are what we would say for the power users. So people that, like business analysts, for example, that want to work with data all the time can do that as well. So it is a self-service model, but it also supports the power users as well. Arguably, when you start to move towards a more enterprise class tool in relation to Maximo, there's opportunity for business process improvement. And what I mean by that is if we think around data quality, often what we find is if we use Cognos in the context of Maximo, we can see what data is going in and where it's not going in, and therefore start to improve the overall data accuracy. Improved operational efficiencies. Again, we touched on that with the early example of a customer that used the data that Cognos can capture to help drive that forward. And because it is self-service and because it is the way that it is, we're able to get faster and more accurate reports as well. In the latest versions of Cognos, there's been a lot of investment around Rave graphics, which gives it a very rich visualization in terms of the overall appearance of the reports, which is really engaging with end users and means that they want to use the tool more and more and more. It's enterprise class reporting that can integrate with other applications too. So again, if we think around the long-term play, if you want to evolve your reporting, the Cognos opportunity again means you can bring in other things like forecasting and budgeting and other types of things as well, including predictive. You will get a much better end user experience as well when it comes to Cognos. Instead of line of businesses having to wait on their reports or putting a lot of pressure on the BI teams to get information to them quickly, again, this gives data to the fingertips of those individuals so they can go and self-serve and then be supported by the relevant BI teams. So that, in essence, gives you the ability to tailor reports in whichever way you seem fit to satisfy your business demands. Having said all of that, deploying Cognos is no trivial task. Even out the box Cognos from IBM needs development work. Any enterprise tool needs to be developed. There will need to be new skills learned by the power users or by the end users. And indeed, you need to get the business to buy in and to want to be able to go on an adoption program. As with all new software, all new tools, the only way you're really going to get the best out of it is to make sure that you get those people using the tools effectively. So recognizing that for most people, development could be a barrier to deployment. One of the things that we've done is developed what we call a rapid deployment framework that essentially reduces the overhead that you would incur when it comes to developing Cognos, meaning that you can deploy it faster, more sustainably, and make it much easier to adopt Cognos should that be the right path for you. Now, if we think back to my comment around how IBM are moving in terms of investment in this space, in the next release of Maximo, shipping free with 7.5.03, IBM will be shipping Cognos reports pre-bill. To save you having to wait for that, we've managed to get our hands on an early release and have produced a white paper with our findings. So with our findings as well as some useful tips as well. So I'll be sending you that white paper after the webinar for those of you that want some bedtime reading. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I've already touched on IBM's investment in Cognos, so let me help you understand the licensing model from IBM, and you can decide which is applicable to you. So IBM have a dual model approach. They call it the direct and the indirect model. The easiest way we found to remember it is if you are a Maximo user but do not use Cognos elsewhere in the enterprise, then you fall under the indirect model. But you still have an entitlement through Tivoli Common Reporting. If you are already a Cognos user within the business, then you fall under the direct model, so you can consume those licenses in your Maximo environment. Either way, you have an entitlement which you could use for reporting over Maximo using Cognos. Again, if that's the particular path that you're thinking about going down. So let's move on to that entitlement in a little more detail. Okay, so now you understand the difference between direct and indirect. I can show you a little more easily your entitlement and what versions of Cognos you have access to. For those of you that didn't know, TCR stands for Tivoli Common Reporting, which again comes with various versions of Cognos model with it. There are some differences between the Cognos versions. So again, if Cognos is the right roadmap for you, it's worth spending some time just understanding what the different versions bring in terms of functionality and supportability, as some versions may not be supported. The one thing that really stands out for me on this slide is you can see how over time IBM is deploying the latest versions of Cognos, as well as starting to weave Cognos into the mix out of the box. I'm conscious that's quite a busy slide, so I'll let you just take that in, and I think there's some things coming in on chat as well, so I'll just check those at the moment. Okay. So, some of the things that we've touched on today. So, one of the lessons that came out of our engagement with our utility company that I mentioned was the fact that it's really important to engage early with your end users and really try and understand what their needs are, particularly around data. We touched a little bit on the 3 roadmaps, and we've gone into a couple of options in some of the positives and some of the challenges with both of those, particularly around BIRT and around Cognos. I've touched on the licensing model and how that works from IBM around Cognos and Tivoli Common Reporting, and we also spoke about the licensing entitlement as well. And then finally, again, going back to a real life example, that was a fellow Maximo user who did actually decide to go down the Cognos route over BIRT, and also business objects as well, because they're big business objects. They felt that Cognos would give them more in terms of what they were looking for around reporting. Okay, so I will be sending the 3 white papers that I spoke about that we've written on the IBM pack, so you can take a look at that, and be interesting to get some feedback from you around what your views are on that. I'll also be sending over the paper from Gartner as well, covering not just the vendors we touched on today, but the others as well. Our website has a host of material you'll find, I hope interesting and informative around the resources page around reporting over Maximo. Both mine's and Chris's details are on the website, and of course you'll find me on LinkedIn as well. I'll also be sending a copy of these slides as well on a PDF, and I hope that you've found today's session useful, stimulating, and perhaps giving you some ideas and thoughts there. So I'm just going to pause at this moment just to close the presentation down and see if there's been any further questions or comments on the chat box. Okay. So, yeah, we've got a couple of questions here. So, Milton Menzies. So, BIRT sounds like not the tool of choice for reporting when using Maximo. Um, I think it depends really, Milton. I mean, the answer is, what's ever right for you and what's ever right for the business, I suppose, in terms of what it is that the business needs from reporting. I mean, in our opinion, IBM Cognos is an option, and it's the tool that will be supported by IBM. IBM will always allow an open reporting model. There's no doubt about that because that's their policy. And it's our opinion that whilst BIRT is perfectly acceptable for a lot of people, there are some people out there that it doesn't quite meet their needs, and therefore they might be looking for something else. Okay, so another comment from Milton, but Cognos graphing capability is very limited, plus does not have the drill down capability. No, that's not quite true actually, Milton. Cognos has always had drill down options. I mean, it's in its DNA. It's been around for many years indeed. The graphics have just been upgraded. I think that IBM probably recognised that was an area they could do slightly better at. So in our opinion, again, it's one of the best on the market from a tool perspective.
Andy, I've joined in on the webinar now.
Oh, hi there, guys. This is Chris Lewis, Director and MD.
Yeah, for those that have been watching the online chat, I've been the one that's been making the answers on there. Andy hasn't been able to see those as I've been doing the hosting. So fire the questions forward. I think we've had a few questions as Andy's covered. Also, the question around well, is IBM going to withdraw support for BIRT? Quite honestly, I don't see that ever happening. IBM basically support an open reporting model, but as I replied on my chat, I can't see IBM putting loads and thousands of millions of dollars in R&D around a third-party provider when they have probably what I consider the best reporting system in the world sitting in their own portfolio. So it just makes logical sense that IBM will support and push forward their own reporting tool. But because they've had issues in the past of not being open, then they're always going to support third-party vendors for those that want to. So that was the long answer to a short question, but the way I see it, IBM will continue to support other reporting tools, but typically they're going to put more money around providing improved functionality within Maximo for their own flagship product, i.e. Cognos. Another one from Milton here was about the white paper, Andy. He said basically this free white paper, will you be sending it to all the people that subscribe to the webinar today?
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. Yeah, so for everyone that's joined today, I'll be sending that white paper out. So again, you can read that in your own time and your own leisure. And if you've got any questions, then feel free to come back to us. I'll be interested to get your thoughts and feedback on that as well. Okay. Okay, so thanks everyone. I think that brings us to an end. I can't see any more questions up on chat. So at this point, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us and taking some time out of your busy day. And again, feel free to contact us if you've got any questions or need any further advice. Thank you very much.